I'm Alex.
And I'm Tony.
And 2011 is dead. I killed it.
Oh.
I decreed that it needed to end because the year was sucking so bad.
Yeah, it kind of ended really badly.
The year was not doing so good at the beginning either. It just kind of drifted off, and
there were some good things.
There were some good things in 2011,
a lot of bad things.
But there was a lot of bad things that came about. It was a very odd year for the gaming industry.
And now there's a lot of predictions about some bad things.
Yeah, we had a lot of focus on mobile phone gaming, destroying handhelds,
and all that.
We had new handheld devices coming out from both major competitors. We had rumors of console unveilings,
and then there was the tragedies that hit Japan.
The tragedies of Japan.
Well, we can go on and on about
it.
So let's.
But don't forget about the games.
Well, yeah, these games are good.
So we essentially going to do this in a three-set video set. We're going to first do discussion with the news, which is this video right here. The second video will be us showing off all the games that we received this year, talking about what we feel was our favorite games and what experiences we had with those, just to give people an idea what we had experienced in 2011. Because frankly, we didn't play a lot of the major games that I didn't play Arkham City, for example, and that game could have been a good game. So anyway,
I kept trying to put that off because I want to play Asylum first.
But we haven't.
And every time I try to think about playing Asylum, something happens.
Yeah, and then we also got the third video, which will be our predictions and overall standing for 2000 and Dose. I was thinking how to say 12 in Spanish.
Well,
it took me a little longer than necessary to get it out there.
Anyways, here's the first video of 2011. Goodbye.
The gaming news. 2011 had quite a slew of news. And by the way, it's really hard to go back to the beginning of 2011 to find the news.
You forget how long a year is until you start looking back.
In fact, at the beginning of 2011, we were still covering news on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But then we stopped in March because I felt we could have done more things otherwise, and then things started slowing up. I'm not going to get into self-critique
At the beginning of 2011, there was a lot of high hopes for the industry.
Well, we're going to go with... Actually, this was fairly recent. The PlayStation Vita, the PlayStation Phone, and the PlayStation Suite. All these were unveiled in January.
Yes.
Essentially, Sony came out and said, yep, we have a handheld. It's called the NGP. That was a kind of a stupid name anyways. But essentially, it was a device that had a touchscreen, was multi-touch. It was a huge screen. It had two joysticks and a touchscreen. It did this. It took Charlie in the fries. And
it pretty much did what the PSP didn't do, which was PSP was basically a portable PlayStation. This was a portable PlayStation 3 with extra pizzazz, making it unique.
And of course, it also been like, well, because it's a full touchscreen with multi-touch, you could essentially fight against the iPhone and touch, and even actually have the same interface as essentially smartphones.
And the screen is big enough that people could say, "Oh, it's better than."
Yeah, and the graphic system's like the PS3, so that was the big thing. And the PlayStation Suite was, I don't even know if that's even out yet all the way. Essentially saying that if Sony wants to, they can say, these games are okay. You can buy PlayStation games emulated through it. Put on your Android phones.
Yeah,
it's all.
I think it is. I think
that the Xperia Play
was a big thing.
Was thinking Minecraft was for that as well. And then of course that was the PlayStation Phone idea because people thought that the new handheld would be a phone. But but it's not. But it does have 3G networking, which does cost money. So might as well be a phone.
And it's also through AT&T.
Yeah. Oh, AT&T. That was unveiled at E3 and people did not like it. And by the way, the Vita did come out in Japan, and people has been having this... Right now, they're having that doom and gloom feel. Because it came out and sold like 320,000 in 1 week.
As opposed to 700,000 they were thinking they were going to sell.
Well, that's how much they shipped. And then the following week, it only sold 70,000. So people are saying that maybe it's not a good time. But mind you, it's only 2 weeks in. We don't have many games out there right now in circulation. I say wait until
Square Enix releases a game.
Until Square Enix announces a game for it. All they need is either a Monster Hunter or a Final Fantasy game, and they're good.
Yes, it'll jump right off.
Speaking of new devices, Nintendo was going to announce a new console at E3 2011.
Yes, the Wii U, right?
Yes, but then Ubisoft, or we assume to be Ubisoft, leaked pretty much everything to a website. I think it's called 101.net or something like that.
I don't know,
it was a website that dedicated to video game news. It was French, so we all assumed essentially it's Ubisoft because it's a big publisher. The concept was a touchscreen controller, a controller that essentially was a controller in all shapes and forms, except there was a touchscreen in the center, and that turned out to be true. Nintendo.
And actually, what's funny about the Wii U. The controller itself, a lot of people assumed that's what the Wii was going to be. Yeah. Because when the DS came out with touchscreen features, people were like, maybe we'll use it for the console.
So now it comes out here, and now a lot of people were a bit... there was a bit of a shake in the unveiling, because when Nintendo first unveiled it, they're like, well, with the Wii system, it was about all of us, but now with the Wii U, it's just about you. And then people started to realize what Nintendo meant by that was the controller was essentially a solitude device. A device that you couldn't play party games on the Wii U because you could only have one of those devices. And that actually became a big controversy between the press. They're like...
Well, the problem with that is that the whole point of even like the Xbox 360 and the PS3 is you still have multiplayer.
Yeah.
And so when you immediately cut that out and say Wii U is just for you, it essentially means, well, what's that mean with multiplayer?
Yeah, and not to mention the fact that, you know, Sony was like, oh, well, the Vita could do it too, because it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, Nintendo really shot themselves in the foot by revealing all this stuff, because technically a lot of the other devices could do it.
It was worse is the fact that when they unveiled it, they kind of didn't really even focus on the console itself or any of the software, anything major. Even the game demos that are there, they literally didn't even call them demos. They called them experiences. Which is shorthand of saying these are project ideas that may never appear back again.
And then also they went on to say that but the big thing they said is, oh, third parties are supporting it.
And then EA comes out and says mentions Origin, and people are afraid that now you're going to have to sign in for Ubisoft's games if you want to use Ubisoft, or EA's to go to EA's, or Steam.
Nintendo basically doesn't want to make their own system.
And that is a big problem, because if they don't have the unified device, people are just simply going to say, forget online altogether. And it's just going to be maybe 2 generations behind everybody else. That's bad. They're going to have a full re-unveiling at E3, and I'm predicting that the name will stay, but they will revitalize the way it's done.
They change the name.
They're not going to. Anyway, from console announcements to closure announcements and layoffs.
Sad.
It's a bad few years for the gaming industry. So let's run off a few that I have over here on the list off the camera. Blue Tongue, that would be the developer of The Blob and The Blob 2. They got closed along with a number of developers from THQ. Lots of layoffs from THQ.
THQ is falling apart.
THQ actually tried to actually believe that the U-Draw tablet, which was really good for the Wii, they thought that it was the same demand on the 360 and PS3, and they pretty much banked their sales on that and Saints Row the Third, which did well, but not the tablet crashed. Then after that, we got Bizarre Creations, which is probably one of the biggest closures of the set, because it was a developer that's been long in existence and, frankly, had no reason to collapse. The reason why it did was that Activision bought the company full and then just didn't sell it, just dissolved it. So it's kind of...
And I hate when companies do that, where they buy out, they want the IPs and talent, pull it in, and then just dissolve everything else and get rid of any little excess.
I mean, I'm not a fan of the project. I'm not a big fan of sim racers, so Project Gotham Racing wasn't really my thing. But I guess it kind of wasn't. I didn't get time to play the game series, to be honest. But Blur and 007 Bloodstone were released within a year of each other, and frankly, I think Activision already had the axe on them as soon as Blur didn't sell well. They were already like, we're going to close the company, just finish your project, and we'll kill you.
And next?
Then we also had BlackRock, which developed Pure, and then split second. And essentially, everybody who was related to Disney, with the exception of Junction Point, all of those companies got crushed or pushed into social gaming. This is interesting because Disney came
worse than death.
Disney literally came back into the gaming industry probably last generation to try and create a brand for itself,
and then backed away.
And then they backed away because they are incompetent at developing games for it. Meanwhile, WB Games is doing much better, so keep that in mind. By the way, for 2012, expect Epic Mickey 2. Hudson Soft. This is a depressing one. Hudson Soft is depressing
because you saw all these games they were making for like the 3DS and stuff. Like they're bringing Bomberman back to his roots.
They were doing lots of things. They're
back to be a platformer.
They took forever to make Bonk. That Bonk downloadable game should have been out at least a year ago, and it took forever.
But now the fact that Konami said, "All right, you know what? We're taking Hudson and we're destroying everything about it."
I mean, they went so far as to they took him in. They literally said, "We're making mobile and social games with this company." Then all of a sudden, one of their biggest franchises isn't really big in America. It's called Momotaro Densuru or something like that. I just destroyed the name, but it's essentially it's like mix and managing trains and whatnot.
Yeah.
There's only 4 main developers of it. 3 of them left as soon as it happened, so they canceled the franchise. It's one of their biggest franchises, and because of the merge, it's canceled. It just goes to show that, frankly, Konami. My belief, frankly, is that in 3 years, Hudson will no longer exist.
And even the head of Hudson,
even
the big guy,
Master Higgins, he's gone. So it just goes to show that pretty much
what you know Hudson is
what you know of Hudson is dead. What you have now is a shell that will die within a couple of years. Then Game Republic has quietly disappeared. They were the developer of Genji. They did Folklore for Sony, and they did 2 recent games for Namco. They did Majin in the Magic Kingdom or something like that. And Night Contract or Contract. Those games were the last games they made, and then frankly, after that, they kind of disappeared, and people looked it up, and the company doesn't exist anymore. So that's there, and let's skip that one. Ignition, UTV Ignition closed a few branches. They're mostly focused on publishing, but they pretty much closed most of their team. GSC Game World, which is the developer of Stalker, a first-person shooter franchise, people love that. They announced lately that because their Ukrainian government wanted some money in and a bunch of other things, they're just going to close the company. And then after that, GamePro. GamePro is not really a game developer.
Well, but it's been around for a long time, and it's just showing how damaged the gaming journalism magazine.
The only gaming magazine that's still alive to date that's from that era is Nintendo Power.
And that's changed hands a few times.
And I don't think they're going to stay much longer either.
You don't think so?
I don't think they got much longer than a few years left. Then finally, this is the one I skipped because I wanted to say the big thing about it. Team Bondi, the development team behind L.A. Noire.
Yes, now they spent a lot of money and a lot of time creating L.A. Noire. There's a lot of publicity behind it because Take-Two took it, right?
It was Rockstar. Take-Two. But what the biggest thing is that it was being developed by, I think his name was McNamara. But he was essentially a very hard person to work with. He kept on changing the concept. He kept on working everyone was expendable, essentially. And there was actually a Reddit post, among other things, of people saying literally that to develop that this was, you do not work under these conditions. But that's what they did. It was very cutthroat, led to a whole bunch of negativity.
And as soon as it finished...
And L.A. Noire sold millions of copies.
And they're not getting money for it.
But it still couldn't keep itself alive. The company collapsed under itself. Rockstar literally pulled the rug under them and said, "Forget it. We're taking our." They apparently had to submit a whole bunch of people in there to finish the project just to get it done, and then they got rid of it. So Team Bondi is actually working on I think a Mad Max game now.
If they're still around.
No, the director is jumping to other groups. Meanwhile, and there's acquisitions. Twisted Pixel, after making The Gunstringer, was purchased by Microsoft.
Which is no surprise by us, since they've done so many unique games
in fact,
for Xbox Live Arcade.
I think only 2 of their games are not on exclusives. The Maw is for PC, and Comic Jumper, which is also on PlayStation Network. Everything else has been exclusive to Xbox Live Arcade. So congratulations, Twisted Pixel! Hopefully this does not turn you into nothing more than a Kinect developer, because frankly...
I'm worried about that,
frankly, Kinect is a great system and all, but I would say that you can do a lot better than just doing gestures and stuff. You could actually create some really good stuff.
I really want to see if Microsoft can give them like a whole slew of money, or just let them develop a full-blown game. We don't see what they take it.
Well, they have. The Gunstringer was a retail game.
Really?
Well, it's being sold as a retail game. Yes. It comes with Fruit Ninja Connect. By the way, Tony has a cold in case you didn't notice.
Yeah.
Also, PopCap was purchased by EA.
That's a huge one.
PopCap, we're talking like Zuma and Feeding Frenzy and Peggle and Plants vs. Zombies.
Big things.
Now they're all essentially isn't Chillingo, who also published, who was also before they got purchased. They published Rovio's Angry Birds before the purchase. Chillingo is now also owned by EA. EA is essentially snatching up as many social game developers as they can and publishers, and they're doing a good job in that sense. Hopefully they aren't killing it by doing that. By the way, Zynga, which is the #1 social game developer, had their IPO this year. It's not doing so hot. It's just kind of stumbling out.
Because the problem is, let's be frank, the social gaming world requires freemium games, where it's free but you have to pay for things. Eventually that catches up on you, because eventually people stop buying things, and all your development costs aren't being paid for.
And this year's biggest thing is that it was mostly focused on the social gaming and phone gaming. Even at GDC, Satoru Iwata, CEO of Nintendo, had essentially a rant, kind of him claiming that selling games. He wasn't saying that phone gaming was bad.
And independents are bad. He wasn't saying that at all.
He was saying that selling games for $1 is selling yourself short. To sell your games at $1 or $2 is terrible, because it's really not putting value in gaming. It's actually decreasing the value. And then they release Steel Diver.
Yeah, that was a big mistake. But you've got to think about the fact is that when you spend 100 hours making a game and you sell for $1, it means an hour of your time is worth a penny.
Well, we're not getting into it.
But that's but
continue with the news. iPad 2 is announced. Everyone, hold on to your hats. It's time for another iPad.
Well, guess what? The big thing that I was frustrated about was when they said, "Oh, there's certain games on the iPad 2 that won't play on the iPad 1."
Well, there's some games on the iPad don't play on the iPhone. But I got an iPod Touch from you way back when. It doesn't play like half the games I could try.
No, but the problem I'm having with that is that means people constantly run out and buy new iPads. But when a new console comes out, they're going to say, it's too expensive. It offers a completely new wide range of games.
Anyway.
Whatever.
Yeah, and attached to that, Steve Jobs died.
So that was a shock.
So people are suspecting what are they going to do now? He's dead. The only upgrade they've had to any of their devices was the iPad this year. So maybe people are saying iPhone and iPod Touch, they're due for a reboot for those devices.
Yeah, and in fact, they came with the iPhone 4S. This is an iPhone 5. It's questionable about that.
And the 4S is clearly just because they pushed Siri on it. Jumping from handheld to another handheld, the 3DS launched. It launched in Japan in February and in America at the end of March.
Yes.
They kind of stuffed the channels to make their shipments, and then it kind of went boom after that.
Yeah, what happened was they came out of the woodwork saying, here's what's going to happen. We're going to release our 3 games for the launch directly from Nintendo.
10 Dogs Plus Cats, Pilot Wings Resort, and Steel Diver.
The problem is all 3 games lacked breadth. Like they didn't have the full. They weren't lengthy.
The scope or the quality of the games were not to the extent of what many people were willing to push into it.
And Zelda, they delayed till after E3 that year, which is like 2 months later, because at the launch window they wanted more third-party support.
There wasn't any eShop available at the time, and there wasn't a lot of third-party support even there either. There was
Street Fighter 4, which was sold very well.
Yeah, that sold well because it was the only game at launch people wanted. But the thing here was that it was too expensive.
I remember going to a store, and there was a big problem is that it didn't differentiate itself from the DSs. Everyone is waiting for a revision of this device, but the only reason the DS Lite came out so early as it did was because the DS started selling like hotcakes, and Nintendo had already begun the revision. I doubt that the 3DS is going to get a revision until...
Is it 13?
2013 at the earliest.
Well, 2012.
Now, what happened was because of all this of the sales of the systems, companies, third parties kept pulling back, saying, "Oh, we're not. We're waiting. We're cutting our development completely on it." Nintendo was forced to take some drastic measures. Nintendo in panic mode is the best.
Apparently, Nintendo in panic mode is the best Nintendo.
They dropped the price $80 within 3 months. That was like crazy. We've never seen that before from Nintendo.
Yeah.
And the other thing was the ambassadors program, which was try to get people. It's like, oh, you bought your system when it was still $250. Well, here's
20 games,
20 free games,
10 NES and 10 Game Boy Advance. The NES games will be available at some point in time in the life of the 3DS, but according to Nintendo, the Game Boy Advance games will never appear. And essentially, now it's a big thing.
And also Mario Kart and Mario
and Monster Hunter in Japan. All those things helped, and now the system is selling.
Though the extra joystick thing,
that's optional.
Well, it's
optional, but it doesn't. But it makes people say there should be a revision again. So whatever, I'm not gonna do that.
Back around full circle.
So speaking of 3DS, guess what Capcom did? They canceled Mega Man Legends 3. Ta-da! Yep, that was a big one for this year because essentially, after all this time of saying, "Hey guys, check this out. You guys get to help make a game. It's Mega Man Legends 3. You guys wanted it. We're gonna show it off.
We're even gonna have a demo for $2.
For $2. We're going to release it on the eShop. When it launches, you guys get to play it. You can have some beta stuff in case it doesn't work. You guys at least get this beta to play, this alpha prototype to play around with.
Apparently that little beta, the demo that we're going to release, was actually going to be sent to Capcom's higher-ups for greenlighting. The game hasn't even greenlit, which means there wasn't even a possibility that it wasn't even confirmed that it was in development.
All they needed to do was release it and see what happened. And of course, Capcom came up with the multiple buttons in here and said, well, it needs to sell enough for us to get an idea. And then after that, they're like, you know what? We changed our minds. Don't even bother giving it. They canceled that. Keiji Inafune left the company before that was even done, and that was a big thing. Keiji Inafune left Capcom, and
they also canceled Mega Man Universe, which was essentially Mega Man powered up too.
Look, I'm not going to say Mega Man cared. Mega Man Universe.
But
the fact of the matter is, it led to a whole campaign to the point where there's now a campaign on Facebook.com, which is Get Me Off the Moon / 100,000 people from Mega Man Legends 3. Unfortunately, I don't think that's ever going to happen, to be honest.
Capcom is stubborn like that.
But the point of the matter is...
Though we get another Dead Rising.
We get another Dead Rising of well, they bought that company. So the thing is that, frankly, Mega Man is now a dead franchise to the Capcom brass at this point. And it's really a shame because, frankly, Mega Man is a great franchise. They should bring him back, even if it has to mean about creating a brand new franchise reboot.
They recently released Mega Man X for the iPhone, although it looks really bad.
Speaking of campaigns, fans may have won in a campaign to get Nintendo to release games.
Yeah, Nintendo. People noticed that Nintendo was not going to release 3 games, Japanese titles.
Yeah, Xenoblade Chronicles.
Xenoblade Chronicles, The Last Story, and Pandora's Tower were 3 titles that were potentially viewed by people in Japan as some of the best RPGs this generation.
Yeah.
And also that they were coming to Europe, being translated and all the fun stuff, but they weren't coming to America.
Right. And so
there's no Wii games coming out in America, so why not?
People emailed them, and Nintendo said pretty much, we have no plans. So thus created Operation Rainfall, which was literally a mailing, Facebook commenting, everything.
And even pre-ordering at Amazon. Because you can pre-order on Amazon, and if the game doesn't come out, your money never gets charged. So 700,000 people pre-ordered the game.
700,000.
I'm just throwing numbers out there.
They don't throw out numbers.
But pretty big
Where
number.
Are you, VG charts? But the point is here is that it was enough, apparently, that GameStop had noticed this and actually went to Nintendo and told them, hey, if we'll help back you to bring over the European version of the game, reskin it as an American version, and we'll sell it. And so now, as a GameStop exclusive, next April, as well as Nintendo.com, you can buy Xenoblade Chronicles. And rumors have it that based on the sales/pre-orders of this game, it will determine whether we do the last story, and then after last story, to
So if you ever had an interest to playing these games, which are apparently the best on the Wii, get it, because what else are you going to be playing on the Wii?
At this point, frankly, after the first quarter, I'd see absolutely nothing.
Yes.
So it's better now than later.
Oh, here's a big one. The network is hacked.
The PlayStation Network got hacked by the Anonymous group, and a lot of information, personal information, was taken. What's worse was that the PlayStation Network was literally down for a matter of months,
and they didn't even explain themselves. It went down, and Sony never told. The worst part about it was that Sony did not tell anybody about why it was down for at least 2 weeks.
Are you sure about that?
I do remember it took people a few days before they finally said, yeah, your information might have been stolen. I do remember that being a big problem. Why is PlayStation Network down? Why is PlayStation Network down? And finally they said, it's because someone was hacking it. And why didn't they tell anybody? I remember it was poorly. Yeah, it was so bad they had to have a meeting about it, so that they finally said, "Yeah, we're sorry about it. We fixed the problem. Don't worry about it again." In fact, that's when they gave everyone a free game or something.
It was a pretty crappy game, apparently. But either way, they fixed it, and every single speech they've had since, they've mentioned security in that. And actually, funnily enough, Anonymous is threatening them again, but not the same way. They're threatening their corporate side more than anything else. Anyway, that was a bad time. Especially, that was a bad time for
PlayStation Network. That was really bad, especially as some games were coming.
Jumping from Sony to Microsoft, the Xbox front OS has been updated again.
Yes,
and
for all you Kinect users, it now works perfectly.
For all you not Kinect users or
Good
Xbox Live indie game developers,
you got screwed in the butt.
Yeah, unfortunately,
I look at the navigation of it. We don't have a Kinect. We played with Kinect. We just don't have one. But it's frustrating to navigate, and getting to the indie development, the indie site of it, part of it, it's just impossible to locate.
There is literally a game developed by Nathan Fouts, who Mommy's Best Games, that literally describes the difficulty of finding the game in Xbox Live indie games, and it makes a mockery of it.
And in fact, there's advertisements everywhere.
It's pretty much they're turning the Xbox 360 into literally just being a media device. They don't care so much about the games as long as they can get people to buy their Xbox Live Arcade, their Xbox Live subscription, and just use Hulu for all they care.
And Kinect. Now, the big thing about the Kinect is what they really want them to do is they don't really want them navigating. They want them to say Xbox.
Yeah, Xbox
movies.
Xbox
and they'll take them to movies. That's what they really want people to use the Kinect for.
Because doing this, by the way, at our Best Buy was pretty difficult.
Yeah,
anyway,
it's frustrating.
So that happened. Duke Nukem Forever finally released. No crap. The game was crap.
I was playing it. It was just they had a bunch of ideas of what they could put in the game,
and it was boring. It wasn't entertaining. It was a long rant that I don't want to get into, but it wasn't a great game. And I give props to Gearbox for finishing the game. But frankly,
if they are going to make another game, I really like Gearbox to make from the ground up.
Yeah, try and reboot
also,
it.
Gearbox is working on Borderlands too.
Yeah. Hopefully that actually works out. Maybe. Call of Duty Elite. was announced this year.
Well, this was expected, being how popular Call of Duty was and how Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 was coming out.
Yep.
They needed something to get more money out of all those Call of Duty
By the way,
fans.
according to certain people, the $10 hike in the yearly subscriptions for Xbox Live or Xbox Live, that was because of Activision. But this update is the Elite system is free for some people, but a lot of positives and stuff, a lot of like video editing, uploading, and whatnot, that requires money on a monthly basis. And according to their statements, that's actually doing very well. Not to be unexpected though, because essentially I feel that a lot of people who buy Call of Duty games and Madden games and stuff, they do it on a yearly basis and really don't buy many other games besides that. So, hey, what are you gonna do with that?
I'm just worried that eventually this is going to lead to a trend where a game franchise gets its own network, a special paid-for service.
Well, that was part of the issue people were having with it, but that's a slippery slope argument. Kind of like, oh, he smokes one bag of weed, he's going to smoke all the bags of weed.
I have no idea where you're going with that one.
That was a bad analogy. Pro tip.
Don't smoke weed.
Don't smoke weed.
Drugs are for fools.
Halo 4 was announced, start of a new trilogy. They mentioned Xbox 360.
I doubt
it's going to happen.
Unless the new Xbox 720 or whatever it's going to be called, doesn't come out for another 2 years. Like, doesn't come out.
If it comes out next year.
If Halo 4 comes out next year, that'd be fine. But if Halo 4 comes out in 2013, it won't make it onto the Xbox 360.
Oh, yeah, that's definite. What are you talking about? And Grand Theft Auto 5 is announced. It's going to be a game that takes place in San Andreas. Again. And,
that's all we really know.
That's all we really know. Because, quite frankly, Rockstar Games is very quiet, very secret.
And apparently, the rumor has it that it might actually come for the Wii U.
I doubt it. And the Grand Theft Auto 3 got ported to the iPhone, or iPad and whatnot.
Yeah.
Good luck with that control scheme. Miyamoto's retiring. No, he's not.
Lol.
There was a statement that was taken by Wired.com believing that he was retiring, but he says that what it actually meant is that he's telling all the younger people that he will retire at some point. You better be on your game and keep making it.
Now, what he did say he was retiring from he's retiring from the big honcho role. He wants to take part in smaller roles, and he really wants the other people to step it up.
I don't think he's ever going to do that, frankly.
I think he is. I don't mind. I think he should step down and let people stand up.
This is not really a massive news article, but Metal Gear Rising is now being headed by Platinum Games.
There were a lot of rumors about this because we've seen so little about the game.
Yeah.
And when it seemed like he spent way too much time talking about transferring for it to be discussed, and not enough talking about Rising.
And the funny thing about transferring is that it essentially was transferring between PlayStation handheld devices to the PlayStation 3, which, lo and behold, is already being done by Sony. So it was kind of a waste of just jabbed it ice pick in his eye. And then he's also working on a new game product, Ogre, which apparently is an open world adventure,
which is pretty much what everyone. Oh yeah, Skyrim came out. Great things. I know people who haven't been playing video games who are addicted to this game. I don't even know how they got their hands on it, let alone I don't know. It's crazy how far that game gets.
From Skyrim, we go to the biggest news article that I would say happened this year in particular.
It's also very devastating.
It was the Japanese earthquake that happened in the beginning of the year. It happened around early March, late February. I can't remember exactly. It happened shortly after within a month after the 3DS launched. I remember that much. It was right outside northeastern area of Japan, and less than 15 minutes after it came out, after the earthquake, which was a 9.1, there was a tsunami that hit the entire east coast of Japan. It killed tens of thousands of Japanese people, and it killed everybody. But anyway, but it also destroyed the Fukushima plant, which created all this controversy about nuclear power, and it cut power from all the areas. It did damage to there was infrastructure.
The rescue teams were not prepared for this.
Yeah, and in the end result, in terms of game development, lots of companies had to postpone development for weeks.
I heard one whole development team was really screwed over.
One developer called SKYRIM, who does things like Lode Runner, and also did they did the R-Type games. And Disaster Report. What happened is that they decided to cancel Disaster Report 4, which was almost finished. And on top of that, they said, we're never making any more Disaster Report games ever again. And then the director of Disaster Report, and I think the game was called Steambach Chronicles or something, he left the company to form his own company. And IREM has ultimately been, they released something really a little bit recently, and did poorly. But essentially, everything for IRIM has been canceled or quieted out, and I think that means IRIM is on the verge of destruction.
And I know the companies have been working, and because of this, Sony actually had to change their Vita release schedule. I think they originally were going to have to release the Vita in America and the whole world before this holiday season, but because of the disaster, they were unable to meet production. I think one of the production centers was down there too.
Well, there's also that was also that, and also there was a flood in Singapore and whatnot in China a little bit later in the year, which probably affected it just as much. Anyway, we've been talking for over half an hour about the gaming news, so I hope you paid attention.
Or at least just skimmed
it. I mean, I'll have the link to all this stuff before. But anyway, that's 2011 in terms of news. It's a lot of stuff. Not of bad news, frankly. Hopefully 2012 is better.
Hopefully it's not just all iPhone related.
If you're still paying attention, the next video is actually about the games we currently have that we purchased from 2011. And then the second video after that is our predictions for 2012. What are you doing here?